So let's talk about Ruth and Naomi, right? You've got Ruth, this mother-in-law. I'm saying that backwards.
We're talking women.
We're talking women.
We're talking about women.
The Bible.
The Bible.
The Bible.
Drama.
Drama.
Drama about women in the Bible.
Drama about women in the Bible.
And everything in between.
And everything in between.
And everything in between.
Welcome to Women of Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is not a scholarly source.
Welcome to Women of the Bible.
Welcome to Women of the Bible.
Bienvenidos a las mujeres de la Biblia.
Are you going to take your sunglasses off?
No, I'm not. It's a whole vibe.
Hey guys, it's Petey again, and the rumor is that we're talking about mother-in-laws today. God help ya. Oh gosh, here we go.
It's happening.
Let's talk mother-in-laws. Some of us have incredible mother-in-laws. Some of us not so much. Let's just be honest. Some of us have the mother-in-laws who are all up in our business, who want to order us new kitchen towels because they don't like ours. Or we have mother-in-laws who come at the drop of a hat to help us with our kids.
A little bit of advice for those of you that have suegras. Listen, a little love goes a long way. A little love goes a long way. Don't make it complicated. I think the biggest thing is, because think about this, it's two worlds that are merging. And in my case, I'm Colombian, my husband is American, so we really had two different worlds merging. And I think a little bit of compassion, a little bit of kindness goes a long way. And try to assume that, give people the benefit of, give your suegra the benefit of the doubt, and just show a little love. I think that's the biggest thing. Let's don't make it complicated. You know what I mean? Sometimes, if they don't want to come to the house, that's fine. If they want you to come to their house, that's fine. I mean, really, it is a holiday, but you know what? You can sacrifice one holiday. At the end of the day, look at the long term. Yes, you sacrifice having to spend Thanksgiving or whatever was the holiday that you wanted to be with your family, but now you're having to be with your suegra. But you know what? Long term, you're gonna have this amazing family that God has provided for you. Instead of having a smaller family, now you have a large family. So enjoy the multiplication, the blessing of multiplication.
A great tip that helped me get along with my mother-in-law, I found out what her favorite bottle of wine was. That really helped me early on. Sent a couple bottles her way with some nice handwritten notes. Get involved in her hobbies. So maybe, does she like to read? Does she like bird watching? My mother-in-law has a really cool hobby, and she actually helps save baby sea turtles. So I get to go hang out with her, and she rescues baby sea turtles, which is super fun. So just remember that your mother-in-law is a real person, and she probably has like actual hobbies and interests and things that she likes and doesn't like. And if you find out about them, you might get along even better.
No, nobody likes my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law doesn't even like my mother-in-law. Her husband doesn't even like her. And that's a story if you guys want to tape.
Okay, so I love this story because I love my mother-in-law. I think she's an incredible mother-in-law, and she reminds me a lot of Naomi. She is one of those people I would follow wherever. And so, love your mother-in-laws. Also, fun story, she hated my guts. Because I would walk in her house and not eat her food, which was culturally unacceptable. And I would just drink water because I was really skinny and I didn't want to get fat. And she kept trying to feed me at like 8 o'clock. Spanish people.
Just a few tips that I would like to share with all of you mother-in-laws out there. Not that I know it all by any means, but I just think it's really important that we accept our son-in-laws or our daughter-in-laws and love them as if they were our own children.
No, I'm not a mother-in-law yet, but I will be soon. And I'm looking forward to having a daughter-in-law who I'll actually call daughter. I won't consider her a daughter-in-law, but I will consider her a daughter. I do have one daughter, but it's nice to have this additional daughter join our family.
Okay, so let's talk about the book of Ruth. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of context, okay? So Ruth is significant because it's also one of the only two books of the Bible that was named for a woman. So Esther is the other one, and then we have Ruth, okay? So Ruth, it's really written to be a beautiful Hebrew short story. The audience is God's chosen people, the Israelites, and Ruth honestly is one of my very favorite books of the Bible, one of my favorite stories, and it is a true example of God's redemption, and so we're going to take a look at that.
I need somebody to come get this. I'm done.
So the story of Ruth and Naomi. We all are pretty familiar with this story, and I think for any of us who are married and have a mother-in-law, this resonates a little bit more and rings a little bit more true because you can kind of imagine how this would unfold and what this would look like. So just to refresh your memory.
A long time ago, when judges still ruled over Israel and the land was dried up with famine, a man from Bethlehem, which ironically means place of bread, left his home in Judah to live as a foreigner in the land of Moab. He traveled with his wife and their 2 sons. His name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were descendants of the Ephraim's tribe from Bethlehem and Judah. They had settled and made lives for themselves in Moab. But soon after, Elimelech died, leaving Naomi in the care of her sons. Probably shouldn't smile saying that.
Ruth is set in a time when the judges ruled the land, okay? So I want to give you the characters here, okay? So we have Ruth, obviously, but we have Naomi. So Naomi and her husband have 2 sons, okay? So they decide to move from Bethlehem to Moab.
Yeah, so in the story of Ruth and Naomi, it's another amazing story. And, it's what's interesting about like the story of Esther is that there's no mention of God in the book of Esther, right? And in the book of Ruth, the narrator himself never mentions God, or it's all just kind of in quotations that you get this thing. But what's so beautiful about both the stories of Ruth and Naomi, and then you go over to Esther, is that you see God in it. You see God in action. And the story of Ruth and Naomi is very much that. Here, what's fascinating about the story is, as we know, that Naomi's sons married 2 Moabite women.
What's a megabyte? Mobilite, megabyte. What's that?
Do you know who the Moabites are? The Moabites are the descendants of Lot's an incest relationship with his daughter is the Moabites. They were enemies of God's people.
I didn't know that. That changes things.
Of course, Lot was the one who, the pillar of salt situation for his wife. Remember in the Sodom and Gomorrah thing, he looked back and the wife looked back and she turned into, right, that's Lot. And then they go up in the caves with his daughters and things go bad, right? Anyway, but yet again, so interesting. It's interesting to note that the Moabites are the result of the mistreatment of women, of a man and his daughters. And yet, when you look forward to Ruth and Naomi in that story, it's Orpah and Ruth are both Moabites, and look what happens with Ruth.
The story goes.
I know the story.
All right, continue. Go.
I read Wikipedia. I really did. I read Wikipedia, and they gave me a great story. And not only that, boys and girls, if you're watching and your parents let you go on YouTube, you can in a search engine, you can put Naomi, Ruth, and ladies, Boaz. Complete snack. All right, anyways, and you can watch an entire video on the story. It's a little bit boring. You can tell those people aren't from Hollywood, but you get the general gist of everything in like 6 minutes. All right, so here's the story.
Each son married a woman from Moab. One was named Orpah, the other Ruth, and they lived together for 10 years before Mahlon and Chilion died also. Naomi was left alone without her husband and 2 sons.
Naomi is the mother-in-law of Ruth. She has 2 daughters, Ruth and Orpah, daughters-in-law. Her husband, passes away, as do both of her sons, leaving it just with her and Ruth and Orpah.
So everyone dies, and Naomi is an Israelite, so she wants to go back home.
Y le dijo a las nueras, niñas, quédense, vuélvanse a su país. Cásense de nuevo, yo me voy, porque ya no tengo más hijos para darles. Y ellas dijeron, no, lloraron en gran manera, dice. Dijeron, no, queremos ir donde tú vayas. O sea, hay una relación que nada tiene que ver con lo que se dice hoy de las relaciones suegras y nueras.
So now we have this poor widow. She's moved from her homeland to a strange place. She's lost her husband, and now she has lost her 2 sons, okay? So as a woman, there's probably nothing worse that can happen to you at this point, right? You've lost every single person that you love. You're a stranger living in a foreign land.
She asks Ruth and Orpah if they want to journey with her and travel with her because she cannot stay where she is. Because again, back in biblical times, unless you had a man, you know, you were nothing, but whatever.
So Naomi says to Orpah and Ruth, "You have accompanied me far enough. You must both return to Moab. Go home to your mother's care and your people. May the Eternal show his loyal love to you, just as you demonstrated it to my dead sons and me. I hope he will bring you new husbands, and that you will find the rest you deserve in their homes." She drew close, kissed them, and turned to go on her way, alone. But Orpah and Ruth wailed and sobbed, crying out to her. They said, "Do not leave us. We insist you take us with you to live with you and your people." And Naomi said, "Go back to your homes, my daughters. What possible reason would you have for returning with me? Do you think there are more sons inside of me? Will you marry these unborn sons? Listen to me, daughters, and go back. I am too old. I will not marry again because I cannot conceive. But even if I could, if I still believed there was hope for me, or if I had a husband and conceived sons tonight, would you waste a lifetime waiting for them to grow up?"
So Naomi has 2 sons and a husband, Avi, and the husband dies. But the sons are around, and then they go to Moab, and they get 2 women to become their wives. But the sons die, and Naomi's brokenhearted. And she's like, "Hey, listen, girls, like, I know that I love you, and you're my daughter-in-laws and whatnot, but you need to go back to your land. I'm an old lady. I can't even have kids anymore. I have nothing to give you. So I'm gonna ride out back to, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, one of those cities that are important." And so she's like, "I'm gonna ride back. You guys stay in Moab, and it was good. It was good knowing you. Thanks for playing the game." So Orca, I'm gonna call her Orca for the sake of just the disrespect that she, gave her husband.
Did you know Orpah is where Oprah's mom got her name from? You're welcome.
And so they're walking, they're trekking, they're tired, and she looks at Ruth and Orpah and she says, "I'm an old lady. It's fine. You guys have a whole life ahead of you. Return, do whatever you want to do." And Orpah is like, "Okay, great. I had all these big plans, so I'm going to leave." But Ruth is faithful and she stays with Naomi.
Okay, so she says, "You guys stay here, go on and get married, and don't worry about me. I don't want you to come with me." And so Orpah says, "Okay, great." Orpah pieces out. She's like, "It was nice knowing you. I'm glad I was married to your son. He's gone now, so I'm going to stay here and go find another life," right? But Ruth really has a different heart, and she has a totally different tone. And Ruth says, "No, Naomi, you are not going to go alone. Wherever you go, I will go."
Donde tú vayas, yo iré.
That's a ride or die quote right there. If you're looking for something for Instagram, that's it. Where you go, I go.
Ruth said, "That's great and all, but I'm coming with. I don't care."
Ruth says, "Stop pushing me away, insisting that I stop following you. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will also die and be buried there near you. May the Eternal One punish me, and even more so if anything besides death comes between us."
Oh, I love that Ruth was like, "Yeah, that's great." I think that Naomi gave her all the reasons, just like, the sister-in-law. Was it her sister or sister-in-law?
Sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law. And Orpah was like, "I'll take you up on that offer." Ruth was like, "Absolutely not. Don't care." Shrug, wash my shoulders. Going.
Orpah bolted and decided, when all their husbands died, decided to not follow Naomi. And what happened with Orpah after that, though? Do we know, really? Yeah, there's probably a reason, and it probably wasn't good. So, again, sucks to be Orpah. But Ruth, now she is the one. She's like the amazing one. I mean, that verse, where you go, I'll go, where you stay, I'll stay, is such a beautiful one, and came from this story. And essentially when all their husbands died, Ruth, who was a non-Jew, decided to, instead of following her sister and doing her own thing, decided to go with her mother-in-law, essentially, Naomi. And she said, "No, where you go, I go. Your people will be my people." And something I actually really love about that, in all seriousness, is that it just shows that whatever generational things have happened before you, good or bad, and a lot of times in my head I'm thinking, if there's baggage in your family and you're like, I want to break free of this, I don't want to be held down by these generational curses or just whatever baggage, and I don't want to be held down by this baggage, you can make that decision to break that. And that's exactly what Ruth did. She said, no, your people are going to be my people. I'm not going to be held down by what I came from, because I'm not what I came from. Your people are my people. And so I think that's so beautiful and so encouraging. And God blessed her for it so much that she's literally in the line of genealogy for Yeshua, Jesus. Like, that's crazy.
So when I think of Ruth and Orpah, I think Ruth had a connection with Naomi and she loved her, but maybe Orpah felt like Naomi was up in her business and she was like, heck no, I'm not going with you. I'm going back to my family, back to my people. So good luck.
Okay, so now we have these two women, and they set out back to Naomi's hometown of Bethlehem, and they get back, and there's just giving some historical context. It was probably very hard for two women to come back into this town and not have a family to attach themselves to. Okay, so Ruth goes to work in a field, and she finds favor from a field owner named Boaz.
I like this story because it's a love story. This could be like a Hallmark movie, because not only is it talk about loyalty and faithfulness and this incredible trek through wilderness and God restoring things, but it's this really beautiful story of Ruth and Boaz as well. I'm not quite sure if anyone's talked about this yet. Has anyone talked about the Ruth-Boaz thing yet?
Now Naomi's deceased husband, Elimelech, had a relative in Bethlehem, an honorable, wealthy man named Boaz. One day, Ruth approached Naomi with a request. She said, let me go out into the field and pick up whatever grain is left behind the harvesters. Maybe someone will be merciful to me. And Naomi says, go ahead, my daughter. So Ruth left and went into the fields to pick up the gleanings, the grain that had been left behind by the harvesters. And so it was that the portion of the field she was working in belonged to Boaz, who was part of Elimelech's family.
Ruth and Boaz. Listen, first of all, Ruth knew what she was doing, okay? I love that she's picking stuff off the edge of the field. It's kind of like what we do. You know how like when you're wanting to get the attention of someone and you're like, I just want to see what he's like. And we kind of like flick our hair, right? Or we try to do the like sexy eye to see what the guy's doing. I feel like I can imagine Ruth on the side of the field. She's gently picking up things from her basket. She's trying to get everything ready, hoping that Boaz will notice her, that he's going to say to a servant out there, hey, who's that girl way out in the field? She had to have been a looker. She had to have had something about her that caused him to be interested in her at that time. I was even thinking about the fact that here she is, he's allowing her to pick in the outer part of the fields, and he thinks, who is she taking care of? Does she have a good heart? Is she kind? What is she trying to do? She intrigued him.
Okay, so we want to hang here for just a second. Ruth left her family, she left her security, she left everything she ever knew to travel back to a foreign place with her ex-mother-in-law. So that's a lot of sacrifice.
Now, I have a few questions. Where were Ruth's parents? Did she not think, hey, maybe I should let my parents know that my husband died and I'm going to be hanging out with my mother-in-law? I feel like the real story here, the underlying story, is that Ruth had some issues with her family because she should have gone home. But it all worked out in the end. She got herself a sugar daddy.
Okay, so she gets back to Bethlehem. Her and Naomi are there, and she tells Naomi that she is going to go to the fields and try to pick up the scraps of things that are kind of left on the ground after the workers have worked the fields that day. And she said, and I'm going to pray that I find favor in somebody's eyes. And so Ruth goes, and because of her faithfulness, because of her heart, she finds favor in the eyes of a man named Boaz.
So, Ruth is being faithful Ruth. I just made that name up, but I think that can very well be Ruth's new name, Faithful Ruth. And she's working in the grain field. She's getting wheat to support Naomi. And in her faithfulness, she meets Boaz, who, I mean, if you've read the Bible or if you're come into contact with any Christian single, you know who Boaz is.
Like here we find Boaz. In my mind, he looks like George Clooney. And he's a little older and he's kind of distinguished. Maybe he's a little bit like Kevin Costner in Yellowstone. I don't know. You girls work that out. And we have Ruth. You know, she's just picking things in the field and working her butt off because she's a hustler. If this was a movie, it would be Kevin Costner is playing Boaz because, you know, I just feel like he would look like Boaz. And I don't know, who would look like Ruth? So Ruth is married, she's maybe in her 30s. I don't know, who's a good actress that could play Ruth? I don't know, you picture it. And so homegirl's working in his field, and he really has no reason at all to even try to redeem her or try to help the situation.
So Ruth worked in the field all day until the sun had nearly set. When she finished picking up the leftover ears, she beat her gathered barley grains from the stalks with a stick. All that work resulted in over 20 quarts of grain. Then she carried it back to the city where her mother-in-law saw how much she had gleaned. Ruth took out the leftover food from what she could not eat of her midday meal and gave it to Naomi.
The way she just laid down her life for her mother-in-law. She left her homeland and family. I'm sure, maybe her mom and dad were there, siblings and friends. She left everything to follow and to take care of her mother-in-law. And Ruth, she must have had such love for Naomi, her mother-in-law, that she just wanted to be by her side and be with her forever.
The men are dead, so that's huge all on its own. The men are everything in that culture, at that time, culture, all the above. And Ruth is saying, I need to come with you and I'm going to work. There's nothing left for me here. I'm going with you back to your homeland, Naomi. Let's do this, right? And so she goes and immediately gets to work, and Boaz sees her there. So I think that just tells you that, it's desperation. It's a hopeless situation, but we're gonna make the most out of it. So keep working.
She was a hustler. And I don't know, following your mother, I'm blessed that my mother-in-law is like an angel on earth. So if I had to follow her somewhere, I would.
Basically, the story ends with, if you watch like Indian matchmaking, it's kind of like that. Naomi, they go and they get a job in a field, and they're working the fields and harvesting and doing all these things. And then Naomi kind of looks over and she's like, hey, there's this real hot guy. I think maybe he owns the field. I'm not really sure what's going on. And so she just kind of sets it up so that Ruth and super hot homeboy can catch each other's eye and make a little love connection happen.
Later, sometime in the middle of the night, Boaz was startled and woke up. When he rolled over and looked around, he discovered there was a woman laying at his feet. Boaz says, "Who are you?" And Ruth says, "I'm your servant Ruth. Spread out the hem of your garment so that it covers your servant. You are a near relative of our family." And he says, "May the Eternal bless you, my daughter. For the loyal love you are showing now is even greater than what you showed before. You have not pursued a younger man, either a rich one or a poor one. You may rest easy. You have nothing to fear, my child. I will do everything you ask. Everyone in this city agrees you are a woman of virtuous character."
But this girl, she goes to his feet. She literally does all the right things. And he's such a nice dude, man. I know this is women of the Bible, but who doesn't love a good love story? And he redeems her, and he goes to the other guy and he says, hey, if you don't want her, I'll take her. Which is a little sketchy now that I said that out loud. Oh my God, that's a horrible story. Why did I think that was a love story? That's a horrible story. If you don't want her, I'll take her. Thanks, Bob. No, that's not what happened. He redeemed her. It was awesome. And then they had kids, and Naomi was so cute. And she was like, now I have a son. This story turned out so much worse than I intended. But it was cute. It worked out. In Bible times, it was a super good story. Guess what Boaz wasn't? Her brother. Or her cousin. Her husband's cousin. Anyways, if you look at the genealogy of Jesus, though, Ruth's name is in there. So, she was the great-grandma or something of David. I don't even know if that's true, but I think there's something in there about genealogies, and I'll let Miss Paige talk about that because I feel like I just ruined it.
Yeah, I think as it relates to the Bible, a lot of times we gloss over the genealogies. I say we just gloss over the begots, and even though I don't necessarily always retain them in order, I love to go back and look because in building a family tree, that's pretty much everything that we would love and need to know that God has told us about from one generation to the other. And a lot of it is focused on a lot of, the men, the descendancy of men that's being passed down. But when you look at the story with Ruth, again, ultimately, her line, when it goes down, I believe it's Perez to like Salmon. I think it goes to, obviously we get to David and Solomon. Like that is a major legacy line that I don't know. Again, did she ever know that that's where the bloodline would come from? Probably not.
And so it shows in scripture, what we see is that Ruth's lineage, Jesus came from the lineage of Ruth. And so her sacrifice is so important. And although Naomi was not her blood, they were not related by blood, but they were related by love. They were related by sacrifice. And Ruth left everything that she had to serve Naomi.
From Ruth, I think I learned the biggest thing is faithfulness. That you're not faithful to get something, but in faithfulness you receive. And faithfulness may not look how you think it's going to look. It may be longer than you think it's going to be, or maybe shorter, or maybe, tending to a mother-in-law, or it could be being in a grain field. But either way, faithfulness, there's fruit in it. There's fruit in obedience. And if you are loyal to what God's put in front of you, you will find your Boaz.
And so they got together. But he was also, boys and girls, what we would consider a zaddy. So he was good looking. He had it all kinds of together. And here's the kicker. Naomi was like, you have my blessing, because where I went, you went. So I'm gonna hook you up with my boy.
Ruth, she finds the kinsman redeemer in Boaz. I mean, y'all, I'm thankful for Boaz. Not only did he redeem their family, but I feel like he redeemed manhood too. My dude, Boaz. Anyway, but with that, just know it's important to recognize that if you take this thing all the way back, it's not just a story of, just some random lady in some random tribe who, happens to find a kinsman redeemer. It's not that. This is the story of redemption in a lot of different ways, literally, because those Moabites find their origin in the result of incest between Lot and his daughter. And here we have this beautiful story of Ruth and watching God use just situations that are terrible and awful and create such glorious and amazing things to advance his kingdom. It's really cool.
Yo me pregunto, ¿qué suegra tan especial? ¿Qué influencia en las cosas de Dios tuvo que haber tenido en el hogar para que esta nuera comenzara a amar a Dios también? De manera que dijo, tu Dios será mi Dios, y tu tierra será mi tierra, donde tú vayas, yo iré. O sea, eso es sabiduría. Eso es negarse muchas veces a uno mismo lo que uno quiere decir. Cierra boca y I love you.
You did so good. No, you're a good suegra. It's a cut on that.
Preciosa.
Unnamed and unforgettable.
Can you imagine actually bleeding for how many years was it? 12 years? 5 years? 12 years!
When I think about the fact that these women had no names, you in the Bible, you can begin to say, well, were they not good enough? Why didn't they want to, say, surely they could have said, hey girl, what's your name, right? Like,
if I hear the word menstruation one more time, I'm going, oh.